Hi everybody, welcome to Geology. Taking over learning geology for this afternoon session. I'm going to wait for a few people to arrive before we start our session. Okay. Just in case you feel like checking something out whilst you're waiting, this is my company, Geoscience, and this is my Instagram account, which is my main vehicle for actually promoting the communication of the geosciences. Hi everybody, as you're coming in, I can see 7 people joining. As you're arriving, please tell me where you're from, okay? So I can greet you properly, okay? I'm looking at the comments. I'm looking forward to knowing who's here and where you guys have come from, okay? Just a reminder, if you're here, then Julie, hi Julie, good to see you. Where are you from, Julie? Welcome to the 15 people that are here. As you arrive, please tell me where you're from. From Norwich in the UK. Okay, cool. My older brother, he did his university degree in UAE. Rwanda, welcome. Suze, Anna, fantastic place, Rwanda, amazing geology. And we have Leslie from science educator from Toronto. I love Toronto, city's amazing, and a great university too. Saudi Arabia, Mohammed, we'll be talking about Saudi Arabia briefly later and its importance in the geopolitical landscape and why it's so important with regards to geocommunication. Brazil, Ana, eu falo português também. Qualquer pergunta mais tarde, pode falar em português, beleza? For those of you who don't know, I used to live in Brazil, so that's why I speak Portuguese. From Italy, wonderful. Whereabouts in Italy are you from? And Ana, de onde você é no Brasil? Você mora onde lá? From Hungary, Melinda, pleasure to meet you. Welcome. Just a couple more minutes until we get started, okay guys? So 16 people here. It'd be fantastic to get 16 answers as to where you guys are from. That'd be wonderful. So those of you twiddling your thumbs, if you have Instagram, please check out my Instagram profile, Geologize Official on Instagram. That's my main carrier with regards to geoscience communication. You should please analyze it, pull it apart, make some suggestions. Please go for it. But that's my area, is geoscience communication. I am a geologist, by the way. Everyone else, 30 people here. Rio de Janeiro, Mohammed, great to see you. Thanks for inviting me on here. Mexico, Shelley from Mexico. I went to Mexico 3 times. Love it. I went to Oaxaca, I went to Puerto Escondido, and Tulum. It's amazing. And Rio de Janeiro, cidade maravilhoso. Adoro. Okay. Okay, fantastic. 39 people come, 41. Just wait for a few more and then we'll get started, okay? So for those of you who've got Instagram on your telephone, that's the place to go, Geologize Official, and you'll find some interesting ways to communicate the geosciences, I hope. Okay. Let's just have a look here. 51 people, fantastic. Just closing down a few apps on my computer so we don't get interrupted whatsoever. So for those of you, I've got some more people join here. Rio de Janeiro, Ohio, fantastic. Okay, great. Hi from Croatia, Pakistan, Ireland. I love these places. Hydrologist. We're going to be talking about hydrology, by the way, and from Las Vegas. That's a huge thing for you guys in Las Vegas, isn't it? And so you know all about communicating water resources out there. Very important indeed for the sustainability of for the Southwest USA, Bulgaria, India, and Alaska. 64 people. A few more joining. I'll wait 1 more minute, and then we're going to kick this off. Okay, it's going to be quite interactive. The main bulk of the questions I'm going to ask you guys to save until the end. The moderator of Learning Geology is here too, Mohammed, and he's going to be posting and trying to collate some questions. I'll try and catch some questions as we go through, because I want to answer as many questions as I can, all right, at the end of this. Ricardo, do Brasil, beleza, cara. Algeria, thank you. Pakistan, again, wonderful. Syrian geologist living in Saudi Arabia. Got quite a big section for you in this presentation. Okay, and Valeria from Curitiba, heart of South America, of course she is. Okay, all right. Well, I think that'll do. Got a good bunch of people here already. So I want to kick this off. First of all, can I just have a quick yes or a no? Can you see me clearly? Can you hear me clearly? Please give me a thumbs up. All right? I don't want to leave anybody behind. Just give me a yes. I've got a thumbs up. Yeah. Yeah, hearts, thumbs, I like it all. That's great. Okay. And the text is the right way around, isn't it? It's not inverted like a mirror, is it? It's okay. Yeah? Okay. Fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to start by introducing myself for those of you who don't know me. My name is Hayden. I'm the founder of Geology, and this is a platform which has been around for about 3 years. And my background is paleoceanography, paleoclimatology, doing paleoclimatological reconstructions and using multidisciplinary tools, especially geochemistry, sedimentology, clay mineral analysis, rock organic and inorganic geochemistry to find out what was like millions of years ago. Okay, so my particular area I'm most strong with is Cenozoic and Mesozoic oceans. Okay, so I'm interested in extremely rapid warming events that happened in the Earth's past, and events called anoxic events, which is where major parts of the world went devoid of oxygen, at least in the shallower sea regions of the world. So I always found that extremely fascinating, trying to understand what the Earth's climate and ocean systems did over time, what actually caused these natural changes. Just got a bunch of people joining me now very quickly from various parts of the world, so well done. We are discussing geocommunication today, and if you think this doesn't concern you because you're only interested in bed forms or tectonics or Z-folds, it does concern you, and I will tell you exactly why your input is going to be critical to the survival of the human species. It's not that big an exaggeration. You're going to find out why. Okay, so that's my academic background, is paleo-environmental reconstructions, and I still have one foot in that. But I found from a very young age that I really like to communicate with people. That is not to say that I'm an extroverted person. I'm not. I'm an kind of an introverted person. But I always found that I like to communicate science to people who are not specialists. I also did some acting when I was a child too. And so I really I've always found myself attracted to places like churches and community groups and trying to engage people. Now, what that normally meant was me telling them about geology, okay? And I guess this group is a little bit about that. We want to attract people who are interested in the earth sciences. But I found, and you'll understand why very quickly that that's maybe not the most effective way in engaging the public. So this all started about 3 years ago when I met this guy here. You probably heard of him, Ian Stewart. He's made lots of documentaries for the BBC, and I met him first in the UK. I invited him to Brazil, where I was living at the time, and we did what was possibly the very first ever geocommunications course in the world. But I'm very proud about that. And as I was doing that course, I realized that this is something that I really am concerned about and that I really would like to dedicate my professional life to. Now, Ian was instrumental, and we became friends after this after this course. He was instrumental in basically guiding me to start my platform, Geologize. Okay, and this changed everything for me, basically. I wasn't so obsessed with publishing anymore, which is what most academics are interested in, publishing research. I became more interested in balancing that with a healthy dose of public outreach. And he gave me some really good ideas about how I could go about doing this. So as you probably know, Ian Stewart has made lots of documentaries for the BBC. Very, very effective communicator, but it's really mostly big television stuff. And he said, well, there's not really anybody who's dominating the social realm, and that's a really rich area that you can exploit. And your position in Brazil will actually help you achieve that. And so I started to investigate how I could most effectively do it. Now, I actually come from this from a different angle. I'm also interested in neurology and how the brain actually works. I have experience with people in the past who've had mental illnesses, and I became really amazed and really interested in how memories actually form. Okay, and therefore I thought, if I can use that information and combine it with the geosciences, maybe I can have a product and maybe I can have a service which would be very interesting for other geoscientists to maximize their impact. Okay, now I think that we know instinctively why this is important. I mean, these areas here, I've just summarized the big ones, are the big areas that need to be communicated to the public in order to do it successfully. So we've got events in the geological record, like landslides, failures, geotechnical failures, in dams, for example, tectonic events, atmospheric events. And you've got energy. Of course, geoscientists are actually fundamental to providing the world's energy, and to a certain extent renewable energy, more directly geothermal energy, but also changing attitudes to the way we use energy. Nobody knows better than the geoscientists about finite resources and how much time we've got left. And then there's the future. We'll talk about climate change and adaptation. It's important to realize that Geologize is not only about geology, it's also about the whole of the geosciences. So we're also talking about the atmosphere too. So adaptation and awareness. So I think that for us, it's very, very clear and very, very obvious that geoscientists have a very, very big role to play in the way that we interact with society. Without geoscientists and our expertise, communicating with governments, vested interests, and the public, life becomes quite complicated. We need this information to be successful. Okay, everybody's. So, I want to quickly jump across here. So, I would say, just before I jump on to Saudi Arabia, which is what some people are interested in, I have to say, I want to very quickly underscore that the way we communicate with the general public is completely wrong. Groups like Learning Geology really are interesting to people who care about geology, right? Or are interested in geology, or are curious in geology. I think I'm not mistaken about that. Somebody who's not interested in geology at all isn't going to follow Learning Geology, is not going to maybe follow my account. However, if we have geoscientists talking to geoscientists, well, that amount of communication is about 0.01% of all communication on the web, probably less than that. If we have geoscientists talking to curious people, well, that might get you maybe 2, 3 to up to 5% maximum engagement on the web. But what about the 95%, the great majority of people who really have no interest or no time or don't see any relevance to their personal life? What about the 95%? So if we communicate to the public, we need to really care about that 95%, right? So that's what my channel does, Geologize. I do all kinds of other things like consulting, but my Instagram account is really about catering for that large chunk of the population. I am not interested to communicate and to engage other geologists. Okay, much as I'd love them to be engaged, and they are engaged, they like my content, they love the analogies, they use them in their classrooms, but I'm not interested in actually engaging them particularly. I am more interested in engaging curious people, but I am most interested, the vast majority, I'm most interested in engaging people who have zero interest, zero understanding, the vast majority of people, because people, I hope you understand this, if we can start to erode and engage that 95% of people who are not interested, then and only then we'll be able to affect real change in society. We're actually making people more curious, raising the general awareness of the entire population. It's all very well talking amongst ourselves about this is a strike slip fault and this is that, it's a beautiful example of this and this, but if we're not engaging the general public, those people who like to watch dogs and cats and strange dances on TikTok, those people that account for the majority of young people and middle-aged people actually, then we're actually doing a disservice. We need to engage these people to actually really effectuate change in society. So that's actually a much bigger challenge. Yeah. How, let me ask you, how do we attract people who are just not interested and not engaged in the geosciences? How do we do that? Any ideas? Well, actually, I did tell you that I couldn't take any questions right now. Okay, so I would say the way to do it is use a mixture of different tools that we geoscientists are actually not trained to use. It's a much more difficult challenge to engage non-specialists, but I would say it is a challenge which is infinitely more important, much more important, okay, if we're actually going to change society. Okay, moving on. Okay, well, let me just talk about another reason why I think it's important, and I think this is probably the most important reason of all. Our perception of the world is all wrong. Not necessarily as geoscientists, but the general public has a perception of the world which is kind of it's not complete. Okay, so for example, I'll give you an example from Saudi Arabia. So this is the Arabian Plate, as you can see, Saudi Arabia, the geology of Saudi Arabia. And those of you who know the region, those of you who are from Saudi Arabia, know that it has a series of easterly or westerly dipping Mesozoic and Paleozoic layers, which actually make it really favorable to the formation of aquifers. Okay, now those are really, really important because, well, before 1987, this is the northeast part of Saudi Arabia. Before that, this was the desert region here. But when aquifers were found, and when the engineering came online to actually exploit these aquifers, this is what happened. You can probably see here, these are actually hundreds, if not thousands, of little circles, which are irrigation facilities. Now that turned Saudi Arabia into a major exporter of food in the region. So the geology helped Saudi Arabia become self-sustaining in terms of food production, but it also fed the entire region, including Egypt, Syria, and Turkey, and major parts of the Middle East. So what happens when you don't manage that resource correctly? Okay, and this comes an essential question to communication. If you don't manage that resource correctly, and we don't communicate with people that managing those resources is satisfactory. For example, if geologists don't talk to the Saudi Arabian government or the private vested interest, if we don't actually communicate effectively, then they're simply going to overexploit the aquifer, and then our understanding of the recharge, the replenishment of that aquifer, is not going to filter through to the companies which are actually taking out the water. Okay. The result in Saudi Arabia was that the aquifer was diminished, such that the desert claimed these irrigation facilities again. In other words, the amount of wheat produced in that part of Saudi Arabia fell to zero. And for that reason, the price of food in many parts of the world, especially the Middle East, started increasing. And that spells disaster. Disaster in many, many ways. This is simply a food price index correlation. Okay, this is not only about Saudi Arabia, but you can see that as the food price increases, the higher the food price, the more conflicts there are, the more wars break out. Right here we have, leading up to the Arab Spring, started in Egypt. Now you may remember before the Arab Spring, you had these bread riots. People were fighting over bread because the price of bread was so high. Well, that was because of climate change exacerbating the over-extraction of aquifers in Saudi Arabia, which then made wheat a scarce resource, and that pushed up the price of bread, which is a staple food in that part of the world. So we have people or whole populations falling into war and civil war. Tunisia, Libya, Egypt, Syria, Iraq, Oman, Algeria. This is the Arab Spring, and it gave rise to a huge explosion in international terrorism in the form of the Islamic State. So these issues really, really matter. And it also caused climate change and lack of water resources, caused environmental refugees. And this is perhaps the saddest part. My job, my task, and your task too, should be to help people understand how they are connected to the natural world. Okay? I saw firsthand in the UK and in other parts of Europe hostility aimed at these people here, these poor people from Arab countries who were forced to leave their land because of a failure in communication and a failure in our treatment of their natural resources, okay, of which we are part of. We are geoscientists actually a part of. Okay, so they come to our countries, they face hostility, they face xenophobia. So it's a human story. It's a human story. So if we don't actually help these people by educating our populations here at home about how we in developed countries are connected to the natural world, right, then I think that holistic story about communicating our part of the world will therefore result in these people being treated very, very badly. Okay, so geocommunication doesn't only revolve around educating the people because it's good to educate the people. It's much bigger than that, I believe. The most important part of geoeducation or geocommunication is actually making the world a better place, or a place where people are more susceptible, or sorry, I beg your pardon, more sensitive to each other and to our place in the natural world. That will cause society to change for the better. Okay? Hope that's clear. Okay, now another reason I would like to just address as to why geocommunication is very, very important is because there are examples of bad science out there promoted by sometimes real geoscientists who have PhDs, for example. Okay. There's also uncertain science, where science is in doubt, and that's the nature of science, as we know that as geologists. We never know something for certain. We're always trying to find out more and more and more, and add more and more evidence. And the public is not very well equipped to deal with that. So how do we communicate that? That's another factor. And then there's contested science, where we have two opposing views, two scientists who really don't agree with each other at all and have different pieces of evidence. So I want to just pick up this first issue, and I think it means that we have obligations as geoscientists. We have real obligations to address scientists who are actually manipulating data in a way which can harm society. Okay, and that means that you are involved. Okay, everybody here who's a geoscientist is involved and has the ethical obligation to put your hand up if you see something being distorted in a way which could harm society. Okay, so this is one example here. This is the temperature over the past 70 million years. So we have 70 million years down here, and here we have 0, the present day, at the top. Now this is a very impressive and important curve, which was published by Jim Zakos in 2005, and it's basically sea surface temperatures, and you can see that the temperatures here about 70 million years ago were actually significantly higher than they are today. Yeah, and so they varied up and down, down, up, down, down, up, down, 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 down. Now, what if a geoscientist who has a vested interest came along and showed the public this figure and said, well, it was much warmer back 70 million years ago, and even warmer in the mid-Cretaceous. So here it's actually cold, and here's warm. So here's relatively cold. Today is cold. Carbon dioxide, sea level, temperatures were all higher in the Cretaceous, and it's cold today. The issue with that is that it's a fact. There's no question about it. That's true, okay? But if you just leave it at that, then people get very confused. The general public is certainly not equipped to rebut that point of view. As geoscientists, we are equipped. We understand that, we should understand at least, guys, we should understand that this is an inappropriate scale. Yeah. So we have these ups and downs. We have the late Paleocene thermal maximum about 55 billion years ago, very, very rapid spike in global warming. You have these ups and downs, but, well, that's the big but, we should be able to tell the public that recent global warming will not appear on a time scale of 70 million years. It's like if you imagine a book, each page is worth 1 year, and you've got 70 million pages, 70 million years. That is a book which is 70 kilometers thick. And what we're asking the public to do is to identify only 50 years of warming, 50 pages over 70 kilometers. Okay, so we're using actually help people understand how this is a distortion, right? And we shouldn't be listening, and you should discard what that geoscientist is saying, because in all likelihood they've got a vested interest in promoting this. It's an obvious fallacy. It's an obviously ridiculous way to use data. Okay, so we have an ethical obligation as geoscientists to stand up and say that's wrong. Okay, you can't use data in that way. Okay, just skip forward to the next point. Okay, the other things is we call it uncertain science, is what I alluded to before. Stuff like earthquake prediction, volcanic eruption prediction, all that kind of stuff. To be able to use language in a way which actually empowers people to make decisions despite uncertainty, that in itself is a skill. There are many volcanologists and many seismologists who will go to volcanic and earthquake-prone regions of the world and have a failure of communication with the local people. And that's mostly because they don't listen. Okay. This was another point which was really instrumental with me when I was talking to Ian Stewart, who is a structural geologist by trade. He spent a large part of the world in volcano and earthquake-prone regions, including the Aegean and in Turkey. And geoscientists tend to just parachute in and talk to them about, probabilities and seismographs and, that this house is going to fall down and that. What we don't do, which is half of communication, right? Half of communication is listening. Yeah, we don't listen. We lecture. We talk. Okay, so if we don't listen, we lose people. We lose people completely, and they will just say, "Okay, well, that was interesting," and well, as an expert says it, the other guy said the same thing, and my house is still here. If we don't actually win people over by using our empathy skills and listening, then that costs lives. Okay? In other words, if it costs lives, failure of communication, lives become an ethical issue. We must communicate effectively, and we must use the right language to do it. The other issue is, as I said, contested science. Science which will have disagreements between scientists, or disagreements or hot topics, hot potato topics. The classic example is fracking. Okay, and so how do we engage people who are very, very vehemently against any kind of hydraulic fracturing? Okay, and as geoscientists, educate them about the real risks. Okay, now, I'm not going to take position on fracking here. That's a separate issue. But the actual communication of that contested science is a minefield. Okay, but anybody who is engaged or understands anything about petroleum geology, seismology, and unconventional resources, which are all very big areas of geology, has a obligation to try to engage with the public. Okay? Now, what I'm trying to get to is this point here, is that you are involved, whether you know it or not. You're involved and have an obligation to put your hand up and answer these questions to the public, and you have an ethical obligation to be involved too. You may think that you live in a bubble in your academic ivory towers, but that's not the case. We need to be able to engage people properly. Okay, so how do we address these issues? What do we do about it? Okay, I think that I can give you loads of different ideas about what to do about this. But I think fundamentally this is an issue of education from a very young age. I'm talking about primary and secondary school. Okay, we're not curious as adults anymore. Unless you're a scientist, you've lost your curiosity by secondary school. Science is taught as a series of facts and accomplishments in schools, right? You have to remember facts for tests, right? Whereas that is not how science works whatsoever. It's certainly not how the geosciences works. It's all about doubt and uncertainty. So if we can actually change the science curriculum at school and the geography curriculum, then we can actually make people curious for longer. I've always, because this is why I actually moved into secondary education, I always found that children are much, much more interested in uncertainty and not knowing and questions than they are about facts. Okay, much more interested. We need to change the education system radically to be actually to produce curriculums based on uncertainty and questioning and inquiry minds and critical thinking. That's really, really fundamental. Now that's a conversation that we have to have in terms of geocommunication between geoscientists and those who make those curriculums, government officials. Okay, but what can we do as geoscientists in the immediate term? I think we need training. Geoscientists need training. We're taught to become researchers and academics at university. Absolutely very important indeed. But because my point of view is that communication is fundamental, communication is an ethical obligation, I believe that all geoscience related courses at the university need to include some kind of module on how to communicate science to the public. Okay, that's the first thing. We need to be able to simplify. We need to be able to use examples, angles, analogies that people actually understand. That's like really, really basic stuff. Really basic stuff. If we don't speak their language, what we're doing, this is always what I like to use this example. We're actually we're bringing the people to the geoscience. If we just talk to them and educate them, this, fire them with facts and interesting stuff, what we're doing is we're dragging them to us. Okay? We can't do that. We need to bring the geosciences to them. Yeah? We need to adapt our way of communicating, and it goes way beyond simplifying our language. Simplifying our language is a skill that every geoscientist should know how to do. Okay? And they don't, but they should. I'm talking about going beyond simplifying our language. I'm talking about moving down, not dumbing down, but moving down a level and using languages and examples that they can understand. Okay? Analogies that they can understand. That's what Geologize is all about. That's what my Instagram account is all about. It's using fun analogies, just stuff that anybody would be interested in. Yeah, it's about catering for as wide a public as possible. So I would geologize Shakespeare, the English language, religion. I will do just roundabouts, park, just playing in the park. I would produce quite detailed and quite profound geoscientific content using individual examples that people will encounter, no question about it, on a day-by-day basis. Okay, and that way I hope to gain people who are otherwise disinterested in the geosciences, draw them on board, help them understand how they're connected to the world, and then afterwards they will go out and possibly follow another page which is a bit more academic in nature, such as Learning Geology or Geology Net. That's really important. So it's also the reason I set up Geologize as a limited company recently, because I see that there is nobody in the market right now, no universities. I think it's one university in the world, as far as I'm aware, maybe two, that offers courses in geocommunication. Okay, how to actually use a whole raft of tools to communicate with government, invested interests, general public. There's nobody really doing that so much. And Ian Stewart in Plymouth was the very first course in geocommunication that has actually existed. So what I'd like to do is actually go to universities, go to institutions, and actually teach these courses either online or in person. It'd be my way of helping getting things going, but my big hope is that this becomes the norm everywhere, and then I'll be out of a job. But in the meantime, I want to assume that responsibility, because I think it's an ethical responsibility to actually engage the public as geoscientists. It's important, guys. It's important. Your role in this is really important. I want you, all of you geoscientists, to help people understand how they're connected to the world, because if we do that, people will appreciate their place in the world and therefore treat people who have undergone the misfortune of becoming environmental refugees or civil war refugees as a result of climate change and the overextraction of aquifers. They'll understand, okay, so it's not their fault. It's about the earth. It's about how we're affected by the earth, and therefore they are victims in a very real sense of a failure in the communication, and we as scientists need to stand up for these people and help them too. Okay, it's all about that. It's all about the other things that I talked about: contested science, bad science, uncertain science. It's all about communicating about fossil fuels, energy, renewable energy sources, and all of these things. Geohazards all come into this umbrella term of geocommunication. But I think that the real driving home message is that we're all part of this, and engaging in geocommunication will make the world a better place. Okay, right, I am going to pause right now, and I'm going to ask you to ask me questions. I'll be taking a pen here and a piece of paper, and I will be scrolling up to answer a few points or questions that people have made. Just because it's some here. Laurentian University in Canada offers a master's program and graduate certificate in science communication. That is wonderful news. I'd love to see the content of that course. Is it? I think it's just general science communication, or is it geoscience communication? And does it actually include a module on ethics? That would be my question back to you for that. Beth, we need to figure out how to make it relevant to their individual personal lives. Perfect. This is what I was saying. If we don't make it personal, we lose them. People will not pay attention if it is not relevant to them. Yeah? But that, Beth, is what I was saying about listening. Half of communication is listening. If we don't listen to understand what is relevant to people, then we can't communicate with them effectively. It's absolutely fundamental. Moving up here, geocommunication is important to Beth again. Development of interested general population increases the likelihood that political policy decisions might be better. Yes, an educated population will make more informed decisions at the voting ballot. So absolutely, it will make a big difference. Water in Algeria, another big thing. Food price index in Algeria. I could have done the same. I could have made the same points. Armenia. I could have done the same point in Somalia too, and Ethiopia. It's the same issue there. Barbara, I think it's also important to ask ourselves not only how, but why we should engage in the general public. I think I covered that, Barbara. Barbara, if you're from Brazil, eu acho que eu cobri esse assunto. Okay. You are a hero in my eyes. Oh, thank you, Lauren. That's very kind of you. I didn't expect that. Communication is so very important in the geosciences, and it gets downplayed a lot. Unfortunately, it can be deadly in this line of work if you don't communicate effectively. Can I just add to that one, Lauren? Right? I understand that you're coming from a different perspective, but I don't want to get too controversial about this, but geocommunication is one of the reasons I lost my job at the university in Brazil. It's true. People thought that it was a waste of time. It's true. I was a visiting professor, so not tenure, essentially, and the university would not let me actually go outside Brazil to do my field work. There was some bureaucratic mistake. I wasn't allowed to travel and collect data, so I decided that I was going to focus on geocommunication. Okay, and it was fantastic. But when it came to renew my contract, they were like saying, "Well, you got no data, you haven't published anything. You can't do that. It's not allowed." And I said, "Well, look, I've been doing all this geocommunication and getting lots of visibility for the university. It's been fantastic." And unfortunately, they were saying, "Well, it doesn't matter. Geocommunication is not important. Publishing is important." Now that's going to be an issue for you at your university if you are at university. If you decide that you want to talk to the public, okay, that is very low priority still, and that's a big challenge that geocommunicators have when they are at university, and it's even a challenge that Ian Stewart himself, would you believe it, has confronted himself. Yeah, people really have a lot of prejudice towards scientists who want to communicate with the public. Scrolling back down again. Okay, very quickly. Okay, so thank you, Leslie. You'll follow up with some more details. Should we engage with politicians? Barbara asks. Yes, absolutely. there are not enough geoscientists engaging with politicians. Maybe they're afraid about being sucked into this, quagmire, the corruption of politics on a day-by-day basis, and maybe being affiliated with a political party. It becomes kind of scientific dynamite if you affiliate yourself with a politician. But I think we should not be afraid. We should stand by our principles, and I think we do need to. Which method in communication do you prefer? If you check out my Instagram account, Geology Official, you'll see that I prefer using everyday examples. Okay, that's the method I prefer, because that is the way that you're going to communicate, or the way you're going to connect with the most number of people possible. Okay, if you communicate just showing different geological phenomenon, which are beautiful and lovely as a geologist, which I like personally, I follow lots of geology pages, but if you use those, then you're not going to engage most of the people. You need to speak their language, not yours. Okay, so we're talking metaphor, analogy, imagery in your language and in your figures. That's the way to communicate with real people. Okay, someone said thank you very much, thank you very much. Okay, a question here from Chiara, sounds maybe Italian. Do you think good geocommunication goes together with geoethics? Yes, I do. What about the increasing financial support by oil companies and other geo-resource companies to universities? In that case, how do universities do a good geocommunication to their students and to the public? Okay, take your first point. As I said, geocommunication is an ethical obligation, I believe, but we need to, as geoscientists, communicate with the public and to raise our hands if we see any wrongdoing or anything said which can harm society, or any policy which could harm society, which trespasses onto our field of geosciences. So it becomes an ethical obligation. We should do it. We must do it. It's ethics. Oil companies and other georesources at universities. Now, I don't see any problem with third parties with their vested interests investing in universities, so long as the geoscientists are not beholden in any way and are not pressured to produce any results or any conclusions which would support that vested interest. Now, you might say, okay, well, Hayden, pragmatically, that's just not possible. Okay, and it might not be, in which case I will happily retract what I just said. But I do know in my experience, because I have worked on projects with oil companies, that I have personally felt no pressure to actually say, there's oil that needs to be extracted here, we shouldn't do it. And in fact, in my experience, most oil companies now, are sensitive to the subject of climate change, and they understand that in this political landscape they are on a finite timescale. They are going to go down, and they're going to have to adapt. And so actually many oil companies now are investing not only in intertonic basins and unconventional resources, but they're also interested in investing and expanding laterally into renewable energy resources too. Okay, I've got some 6 minutes down below here. I need all of the video, please. It will be available, I believe. The owner of Learning Geology will make this available. I will I will try to put it on my YouTube too, which is Geology. Science communication can drive enrollment in earth science programs at university. Absolutely right. Especially if we actually include communication in the science curriculum of geoscience related courses, or any science related courses, then it makes it an interdisciplinary course. Now the focus should be, the geoscience, or the science, whatever, That's no question about it. But if we can actually say you will leave with a basic rudimentary understanding, at least, to communicate with the public, then you actually bring on people who are from, people with different kinds of minds, who might very well be excellent geologists but don't know it. Yeah, and so yes, it would definitely increase enrollment and popularity, and it would make the geosciences a more vibrant future. So that'd be really, really good. Publish or perish is dumb. It infuriates me. Yes, it is. Yes, it's important to publish. I get that, but there's a balance, and the balance is certainly not there. Okay, we need to be able to do it. Thank you so much for this conference. I hope I can use your ideas in Geologize for my high school science classes. Yes, absolutely. Go there. If you do anything about, well, there's just so much stuff I've done. I did something yesterday about glaciated landscapes, and I did it using a piece of string, a cardboard box, and my little boy sitting inside it, and I just dragged it along my backyard, and you actually see abrasion happening, you see plucking happening, and you see it getting embedded into the glacier, and striations on the glacial landscape. And you can do that, and it's really, really fun. People like to see it. I like to think my kids are cute. I think they are cute, so that goes down really well too. And so use that in your science class. I mean, already my videos are used in my science classes, so please go ahead. Instagram is awesome. Oh, thank you indeed. It is a first time for me to follow the learning. I would like the future communications participate in my comments, questions. Thank you. Thank you for this conference. What to do to properly transmit geological information? Okay, this is basically what I was talking about. Hussein. Listen. That's the first step. I'll say it. I said it before. I'll say it again. Always listen to your audience before you actually communicate, because then you can actually make what you're saying relevant. It's half of communication, guys. Half of communication is listening. You've got to listen to be able to answer. Otherwise, you're lecturing. It doesn't work. Lecturing doesn't work. It doesn't work at university. It's amazing. So when I used to lecture a lot. It was fine, quite didactic. It was fine, but then I learned how to teach, like really teach, and learn to communicate properly. And then when I went back to university to give talks, it was much more dynamic, and people did not feel like they were being lectured to, and their learning was way, way higher. Okay, so first, listen. Thank you for this conference. Okay, and what about reaching to the mums so they can do some pressure over schools? Okay, I understand. Yeah. So I don't like to be gender biased, but unfortunately it is true that mums tend to be much more proactive in pressuring their schools. So yes, absolutely. I think that bringing the parents on involved and helping them understand that the schools or the school system, because it's not the teacher's fault, I'll be very, very clear about that, because I am a teacher, it is the government's fault, which tells the schools what to teach and then ranks them in a league table depending on how they attain the grades that they're meant to attain. So it's not the school's fault. So the parents need to put pressure on schools, who then take that to government and write to their members of parliament or their congressmen or whatever, and to try to actually change that. There's no question about that at all. How to integrate people, local government, and geological community. Okay, so that is why Geologize is not only an online platform. Okay, it would be great to. I'd love to go viral and to have people watching all my videos and to be like, wow, geoscience is so cool. I mean, but unfortunately, engagement is only going to be maximum 5-10%, and the more followers you get, the engagement goes down. So it's subject to diminishing returns. So that's why Geology is not only about online. I also do a lot of community work too, or at least I did do until COVID-19 came along. I hope to get back to that. So we need to we do need to engage with the community. Now, what that normally looks like as geologists is creating a geological walk around the city, or going out and doing a rocks and gems festival at the local supermarket or mall, for example. And those are all really nice, really great. But again, I come back to it, that will attract people who are already curious. Okay, already curious. I'm a bit more interested in communicating to the masses who are not curious, to try to grab their attention, right? To show them how it's relevant to even them. Okay, that's important. What my courses do, that's what the Geologize courses do. I give a whole range of tools that you can use to engage the general public who are not naturally inclined to be interested in the geosciences. Geocommunication is more effective if we join to the environment. In other words, listening and talking in a class about geology topics, we cannot achieve a good understanding. Yeah, we need to be out there. We need to be absorbing that environment. Absolutely. So more trips, more residential trips. That would be really good. I'm not sure if that's what you mean, but just talking about it, teacher talk, lecture talk, terrible way of communicating. We need to be emotional. We need to engage emotions, right? And that means we need to have empathy with our audience, and the audience needs to have empathy with us. We are emotional beings, people. Even us scientists. If we don't utilize that emotion, there won't be enough learning. There won't be efficient learning. Okay, so that doesn't mean being, extravagant and doing silly dances. It means understanding what people care about. That's what generates the emotion. Okay. Elizabeth said, I don't do Instagram. How else can I see your videos? This is brilliant. First, okay. You go to YouTube. All right. Click Geologize. I think my most famous, should we say, video on YouTube is the one about how geology gave Donald Trump the presidency of the United States. Yeah, go think about that. So if you just type Geologize Trump, you'll see my video, and then you'll be able to see my other videos, Elizabeth. Okay? Fantastic. This live is going to wrap up very, very soon. I'm going to stay here for a couple of minutes. If you want to, if you're actually watching this after the live, you can still leave comments, and I will still respond to you. Okay? So even if you're not watching during this live, I will still endeavour to respond to you. Nenad says, do you cooperate with protected areas and NGOs? What is your opinion about their role in communication, and do they do it in a good way? Limited involvement. I have had some. Oh, thank you, Learning Geology, for sharing my channel. That's very great. That's very kind. Some NGOs, beg your pardon. This is an old cough, by the way, everybody, not a new cough. So don't worry about me. So I have done a little bit of work with them, and they do have outstanding communication teams, and that is because they have to. They're charities, and in order to actually attract investment and money and public funding, they need to have very effective communication teams. Okay, we can learn a lot from them. Absolutely. One thing I would say about them, which I think they get a bit wrong sometimes, is that sometimes they saturate us with emotion. Okay, and that itself can be a de-stimulant. Okay, that can demotivate people. If we are made to feel bad and guilty and shocked all of the time, then we become habituated to that. Okay, it's all about neurology and neuroplasticity. We need to find a way, and this is actually an active area of research in geocommunications. We need to find a way of communicating urgency to people without them feeling helpless, right? Without them feeling, well, here we go again, scaremongering. What are we going to do about it? Is it really worth it? I'm too small. Those mental attitudes are something that geoscientists struggle with. They struggle with a lot, and we need to be able to address that. Talk about conflict minerals, supply chains to their food or computer will develop an emotional response and a connection. Yeah, absolutely. So people have done that quite a lot, actually. Get a smartphone. It's a Geology smartphone, by the way, everybody. If you get a smartphone, then to be able to show people that there has got an enormous amount of rare earth element minerals inside, which probably come from China, because China has a monopoly on rare earth elements. One big mine particularly, and the lithium probably comes from a lithium mine in South America, maybe Bolivia, and so that story is kind of unexpected. Now, I'll say it will only attract probably people who are curious about the geosciences, but still that's better than talking to only geoscientists who already know that kind of stuff. And so yeah, the unexpected is a nice way, a nice emotional way to get in there and communicate with people. It's really important. Okay, thank you for the excellent session. Looking forward to learning more about Geologize. Absolutely. Please share it. Please share Instagram. Please share my YouTube page. I am on Facebook too, but it's basically mirrored to my Instagram account. So I post on Instagram, it gets posted over to Facebook. My Instagram account is Geologize. I'll just type it down here. Geologize. Okay. That is my Instagram account, Facebook account. Follow me there too. Again, as I said, post questions after this live session. I will happily respond to you. Share this with your friends. Follow me on Instagram. That is a really good way of helping me out. And if you have any questions about any academic stuff too, about geochemistry, about paleo-environmental reconstructions, some of you who are hardcore geologists, that may float your boat a little bit more than geocommunication. I'm happy to answer your questions about paleo-environmental reconstructions in the Cretaceous too. Alright, so thank you very much, Sherry. It's been very educational. I'm really happy. Alright, hope that gives you guys an appreciation, hopefully a newfound appreciation for the importance and ethical obligation that we have as geoscientists to communicate. I hope it's an interesting summary for you, and I will be signing off now and looking forward to answering more of your questions in due course. Okay? I hope everyone have a nice day, a nice evening wherever you are in the world. I'll be signing off now and be with my family. Okay? Take care, everybody. Bye for now.